Worldwide, the impacts of climate change are increasingly visible and alarming. Where does Africa stand in front of these upheavals? Overall, since the end of the 19th century, the average temperature in Africa has increased by about 1.4 degrees Celsius. We can also notice disturbances in the hydrology cycle with a downward trend of precipitation in some areas. According to the 6th IPCC report, current trends will be increasing over the next few decades with more or less intensity depending on future emissions of greenhouse gases. In a scenario of average emission, the temperature median in North Africa would increase. For example, 4 degrees Celsius in summer by 2100 compared to 1900. These temperature and precipitation changes, combined with the rise of sea level, will have various and interdependent consequences on natural ecosystems and human activities. Let's take the example of agriculture. As a crucial sector in Africa, agriculture represents approximately 20 to 30% of GDP and 80% of jobs. Assessing the magnitude of the impacts on the agricultural sector is complex because of missing data and the multiple parameters involved. Some factors are direct, such as extreme climatic events or the impact of the atmospheric CO2 increase on the physiology of vegetation. Other factors are indirect and therefore more difficult to measure, such as the multiplication of pests in agricultural ecosystems, the actual impact of temperatures on population health, the working capacity of farmers, and consequently, the continent's food security. Moreover, human activities also apply significant pressures on ecosystems that can worsen the difficulties linked to climate change. In the Congo Basin, for example, deforestation for agricultural purposes produces a reduction in biomass and natural habitats, while releasing CO2 in the form of greenhouse gases. The increase in drought episodes triggers a higher tree mortality rate, which consequently worsens the phenomenon. To respond to potential trickle-down effects, the evolution of practices is key and requires concrete adaptation strategies. In the case of Morocco, for example, agriculture is suffering from a climate that becomes more and more arid. To foster the resilience of the sector, a national water plan has been put in place, including the construction of dams for a higher water storage capacity, the use of more water-efficient irrigation techniques, or even conversions to arboriculture. Despite the fact that climate change impacts are continuously growing in Africa, there are solutions to mitigate them. Thus, whether it is agriculture, breeding, fishing, or human activities overall, significant investments in decarbonization technologies and sustainable development will be essential to reduce anthropogenic pressures and slow down the combined impacts of climate change without increasing greenhouse gas emissions. In a context of strong population growth and exposure to climatic hazards, the challenges are multiple and urgent to be addressed in order to conserve certain regions in the decades to come. If Africa is today the most vulnerable continent to climate change, it can also become a leading model to follow at the global level in terms of adaptation strategies.